Episode 7 Lost in Paradise. Greetings and welcome, old listeners and new. You've arrived at my dark and sordid little corner of the world. My name is Jessi, and I'm here to share the incredible and the unbelievable. So sit back, put your feet up, and listen to the latest. Today I'd like to try something a bit new, or old, rather. For those who've listened from the beginning, you know I myself have dealt with the dark, with a book of monstrous powers. When it happened, I went a bit crazy about it. I spent some time looking for other dark powers or records of them, mainly in an attempt to find answers. Why me? What did this? Who made this book? How can I destroy it? In my research, I stopped into multiple reference libraries and found many a record that tells tales too insane to be believed. The series I've started has sort of thrown me back into those records and the photocopies I made of them. And so today I'd like to read one. Perhaps I'll read more in the weeks to come. The following is a transcript taken directly from the subject on May 31st, 1987. Only the subject's lines are written here. Whoever he's talking to is mysteriously absent. So you just want me to talk? What are you, a therapist? An investigator, eh? Investigating what? You're shitting me. The supernatural. And I'm just supposed to believe that, eh? And what makes you think that I have anything someone such as yourself would want? You can sense my story? What the hell does that even mean? So you just want me to talk and my story will, what, just come out? Like I'll be all, when I was a kid, ... Oh, why didn't you say so? I'll gladly tell my story for some compensation. My name is Marco Duke. Most people just call me Duke, and when I was a kid I saw something. No, that's not right. I went somewhere. Somewhere not of this world, somewhere where time flows differently and you don't age and there's beauty everywhere. Somewhere there's horror everywhere. Let me start at the beginning. You won't believe me, but I was born in 1919. The Great War had just ended and my dad and grandfather had barely survived it. I grew up with wartime story after wartime story after wartime story. Sometimes it was about the bravery they'd had or the camaraderie of other soldiers, and sometimes it was even about honorable enemies. Others, it was about the terror they felt whenever there was smoke on the horizon, or heart-pounding horror every time someone thought they smelled gas on the air, or how they cramped up lying in the same positions for hours or days while mortar bombs and weapons fire exploded overhead, leaving them unable to stand up. It led to a bizarre childhood, one where my parents both wanted me to be a man just like my dad, but also wanted to protect me from anything and anyone. Oftentimes my father would disassociate and think he was back in the mud, and he'd wake up screaming, or would grab the nearest thing that even looked remotely like a rifle and aim it at anyone nearby. Shell shock, they called it. It wasn't uncommon in my little town, so most people knew that when it happened, usher the kids outside. None of us really had any beef with it. We often just beat our gums while sitting around on whatever stoop or sidewalk we found. Sometimes we'd be struck with wanderlust and walk about the town. That's when we found the waterfall. It was a small little one, just a break in the creek that encircled most of the town. It fell down about 10 feet maybe, and the creek continued on down. I was 16 at this point, I think. The Great Depression was in full swing, so my dad was spending a lot of time at home and I was spending a lot of time outside. Not that I really minded, most of my buddies hung outside too, and then there was Brittany. Now, she was a bearcat, just completely fiery and wild. She hung with the guys a lot and was usually the one to push us to explore. She hated sitting still, and I was more than willing to follow her. She was the bee's knees, you hear? At that point, it was just me and her and a couple boys who I don't really remember anymore. They were brothers of one of my old friends, so while they had an in with us, they were like junior members, yeah? So anyways, we were just walking around the border of town. None of us had cars at this point. How could we? So we walked around everywhere, and we didn't really mind. Home life was tough for most of us, so we all kind of banded together and just never talked about it. We'd never really decided not to. We all just knew we were all going through it, and that was enough. It was all copacetic. So anyways, it was the 4, or was it 5 of us? We were walking the border and found the creek. We'd always known about it, obviously, but that day we decided to follow it. It was early in the day, and none of us were particularly wanting to go home, so we figured why not. So we followed it, chatting about nothing in particular. The new Janes at school, or my buddy's neighbor who was a bit of a dumb Dora. I remember we started talking about Jade and her killer chassis, but Britt was quick to shut that down. She had little tolerance for bull sessions and would tell us to dry up the moment we started. Her dad was a flyboy in the Great War and had the most wild streak of any pilot in the Corps, so she inherited that bit of personality. Anyways, we followed the creek for a good few hours, mostly just gabbing, occasionally stopping to sit on the edge or feet in the creek. Sometimes we'd see a fish and spend a while trying to catch it by hand. We never did, but it was good fun for a while. It was probably mid to late afternoon by the time we found the waterfall. It was small and honestly it wasn't all that much to look at, but we were entranced. It became our new little hideaway spot where we'd just go and hang out. Like I said, it wasn't anything special, but to us it might as well have been our own little world. I often wonder if everything that happened was because of our desire to get away, to be somewhere that wasn't here. Wasn't that little town full of shell-shocked soldiers and homemaker mothers? We'd often talk about other worlds, the idea that somewhere far away there'd be a place so unlike this one that we could never really imagine it. And then we'd challenge each other to imagine it. We'd come up with the most outlandish things. Worlds made of deserts and moons made of diamonds. Countries that had never known war. Places where money didn't matter. We spent days there. Sometimes we'd sneak a tent out and spend some time there under the stars. Me and Britt did become an item. By this point we were 18, almost 19, and her hot-bloodedness was starting to rub off on me. She refused to just be my dame, and I had to be hers too, and I was more than happy to. I'd been crushing on her for pretty much as long as I'd known her. That devil-may-care attitude, it was addicting. Not that she couldn't doll up with the best of them. She was the best of both worlds. We decided that when we got married, we'd have a ceremony at that waterfall. At the church first, of course. Both our parents would have killed us if we hadn't. But also a nice little ceremony for us and some friends over by the place we used to get away. That's why we were there that day. We were talking about our great plans, our ideas for when we got married and could leave and could get away from everything. We met at that waterfall, having the place to ourselves for once. We made out. That bank was open. We were going hard for a while, but we were always paranoid that someone would see us, one of our friends, or someone else wandering the town. It seems so unimportant now, though it's the single most important thing to us. So we talked about our lives and plans, our ideas and goals. I have no idea how long we just chatted, sometimes sitting with our legs in the creek, sometimes just staring at the clouds in the sky. But as the sun began to set, we heard it. It was like a bell being rung just the one time. A loud but soft bong that seemed to wash over us. We jumped up, scared we'd been caught or that someone was about to catch us. But there was no one. It's just the small woods around us and the sound of water crashing into water. We laughed lightly, thinking we were crazy, maybe we'd been dozing, when it came again. Bong. We realized pretty quickly that it was coming from the waterfall, or rather, behind it. I don't know how we knew that, we just kind of did. It was like it was an obvious conclusion, like it couldn't have been anything else. So we crept up to it, trying to peer behind it through the semi-clear liquid. Bong. We stepped through. We hadn't meant to. It was like we were pulled in and we were inside the waterfall before we even knew what we were doing. And what we saw there, it was wondrous. It was like all the stories we told each other. Mushrooms that grew as tall as trees, trees as small as mushrooms. A violet sky lit by nothing, like there was no sun, and yet it was a perfect level of brightness. The grass swayed in a breeze that didn't exist, and we could hear the faintest sounds like wind chimes just everywhere. It was beautiful, the smell intoxicating. We walked forward, not looking back, though. I'm sure if we had, there wouldn't have been the waterfall. I'm sure the world we'd just found ourselves in would just continue on. In short, it was the cat's meow. Everywhere we looked, we found beauty unabated. The air around us was sweet-smelling, and the flowers seemed to bloom as we passed them, all sorts of crazy colors. You know how you say you can't imagine a color that you've never seen? That's what these flowers were. Colors I couldn't even begin to describe or compare. It was amazing. We didn't see another person. It was like this new world. It existed only for us. So we explored. How could we not? Never looking back, just always forward. More and more beauty, continued sights and smells and feelings I could never explain. I don't know how long we walked. The sky never changed and my watch had stopped working. But it felt like days, weeks even. But we weren't tired, we weren't thirsty, we weren't hungry. It was like those things just didn't exist in this place, whatever it was. We called it Happy Land. Not creative, we knew. But it was hard to think of anything else in that place. Only happiness was there. Even when I tripped and scraped my knee a little, I just laughed, happy as could be. Even when the storm hit, we danced in the rain. Huge globs of rainbow-colored liquid that tasted of sugar. Something we hadn't had for a while. It was rationed and expensive back home. When the winds hit and blew some of the tree-sized mushrooms over, we giggled like school children and climbed on them. When Brittany fell off the cliff, laughing as she did, I grinned. How could I not? It was such a happy time, and we were both old at that point, wrinkling and shaking limbs. Which we loved. It was so giddy. I was so elated. Can you imagine that? I'd grown old with the love of my life, happier than you can possibly imagine, and I was smiling as she tumbled to her death. I even laughed as her body crunched on the rocks on the beach below. I danced down beside her lifeless body, knowing she was happy, and I was happy. And alone, I kept aging, getting older and older and older. I think I was probably there a couple 100 years. At one point, my body just stopped aging, and even during the storms, the skies never changed at all, so time was hard. But I loved it. Happiness, ecstasy, it was all I could feel. Even as hunger finally hit me, I loved the pain. Even when I stumbled and broke my arm, I danced with pleasure at seeing the bones poking through. Even when I got a raindrop in my eye and went blind in it, I celebrated. Even when I could no longer stand and crawled using my non-broken arm, I wept with joy. Even when I died, older than I would have ever thought possible, covered in decayed rags with more broken bones and torn muscles than I even knew, I was the most content I'd ever been. I'd forgotten my old life, forgotten Brittany, forgotten everything except that jubilant bliss that was a happy land. And then I closed my eyes for the last time there, and I opened them back here, lying beside the waterfall. I didn't know where I was or who I was, and I lay there, back in my young body, 19 or so years old again. It took hours, I think, before I moved. My watch was ticking again. It was the loudest sound in my ears, but it wasn't unpleasant. It was just there, ticking. I stood and some memories rushed back, not all, but some. I knew I was Marco Duke, and I was by the waterfall, and that was dating Brittany, my little bear cat. And I took a step and I remembered she died. That brought back a bunch of other memories with it, mostly of Happyland. I rushed to the waterfall, screaming with desire, with sorrow, with need. I needed to get back to it. It was the only thing that mattered. I needed to get back to Happyland. She was waiting for me over there. She had to be. She was there, and happiness was there. But I just hit solid boulder over and over. I bloodied my hands and my face trying to get in, to get back. My cries attracted some attention, and some locals came to get me. The sheriff did a double take when he saw me. I remember he tackled me in a hug, tears on his face. I didn't recognize him at the time. It was Preston, Brittany's younger brother. He said some words, some I recognized, others I didn't. He took me to a hospital, though at the time all I knew is it was bright there, just so bright. I spent weeks there, months maybe. I kept trying to get out, but they bound me to the bed. I was visited a lot by Preston, by some others. He asked me over and over about Brittany, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. I didn't remember her name, only that I was dating her. Had grown old with her in that happy place. I would eventually regain all my memories and could speak again. I told the doctors what had happened, and predictably, they thought I was crazy. After 4 electroshock therapy sessions, I just started pretending I no longer remembered Happyland. You try electroshock therapy. See just how fast you agree to anything they say. Preston asked me many things after that. How did I look the same as when I disappeared? Where did Brittany go? Was she okay? He never said it, but there was an accusation in those eyes. An anger and a blame. I told him I didn't know. I could only remember up to that day. One of the doctors eventually told me that it was 1965. I couldn't believe it, but all the calendars were there, all the radios said the date, all the people had aged. Both my parents had volunteered into World War II, where they died. I don't know how. Preston told me that when I'd gone missing, they both drowned themselves in alcohol and had been amongst the first volunteers to go overseas. I didn't mourn them much. It was like all my emotions were numb to me. I didn't get angry or sad at things. I never got happy at anything. I won a small lottery once, about 50 grand. Life-changing money, and it didn't even cause a blip of happiness. I don't think I can feel it anymore. I still go back to that waterfall every year. It's never opened again, but I know it will one day. And I'll go back. It's not something I have a choice in. I just will. No matter the fact that I can't feel anything else, or heal from injuries there, or that I'll grow ancient and brittle, or go blind again, none of that matters. Only Happyland. There, you happy now? Now, what to eat? You had the roast beef here? It's supposed to be divine, not that I can taste anymore. This one, listeners, it's a file I remember I found in my first ever reference library. Most reference libraries, they have small sections on the supernatural, generally tucked away in the back somewhere. It's usually seen as fiction, but enough people still believe in it that they're forced to keep a section of it. Usually just reports like this with absolutely nothing to back them up in any way. Sometimes a photograph that has some sort of blur on it that could be a ghost if you squint at it long enough. I don't know why, but this report stuck with me all these years, tucked away in the back of my memories. Something about the super simple premise, coupled with an underlying horror that, for me at least, only really starts to set in when you think back on it. When I first read it, I actually discarded it, put it back on the returns cart. It seemed too normal, almost. Like someone had just had a really bad drug trip or something. But the idea of there being some sort of supernatural investigator, my predecessor perhaps? The more I thought about it, the feeling of only one emotion, no matter the circumstances, it gets worse the more I think about it. I mean, he says himself, he watched his soon to be wife fall to her death, and all he could think and do was dance in joy. He went blind, his body was in tatters. I think that place, that happy land, should it indeed exist as this Mr. Duke claims, I think it strips you of your humanity. Your ability to feel anything else, your ability to understand situations, to react appropriately, all the things that you learn as you grow ripped away, leaving only a facsimile of your former self. Well, I'll leave you all to your own feelings and reactions on that. And as ever, thank you for listening. Those that have joined the Dark Wanderers and those that have not, let me know if I've convinced you. I'd love to hear your arguments as to why or why not. Until the next, let's cross that veil together.